Walking away is not the same as the silence examined in previous pieces. The silence is the withdrawal of orientation, the stopping of the reaching, the redirection of energy, the removal of your availability from the avoidance world. Walking away is something more complete, more final in its quality. The silence says, I have stopped reaching toward you. Walking away says, I have turned in a different direction entirely. The distinction is felt differently in the avoidance interior, processed through different mechanisms, and produces a different sequence of interior events. The stages examined here are not clean. They do not proceed in order, complete themselves fully before the next begins, or arrive on any predictable timeline. They overlap, reverse, repeat, and in some avoidance never fully complete themselves. They are not a promise of a particular outcome. They are the honest mapping of what actually tends to happen in the avoidance interior when the person they were significantly attached to leaves with the specific quality of finality that genuine walking away carries. The first stage, the rationalization. The avoidance first interior response to your walking away is the construction of the narrative that makes the walking away acceptable. Not because the narrative is true, it is not fully, not in the ways that matter most, but because the avoidance system requires an accommodation of what has happened that does not immediately require the full weight of the loss to land. The narrative is the buffer, the self-protective story that interposes itself between the event and its full emotional impact. The narrative takes familiar forms. You are not compatible in the ways that sustained connection requires. The timing was wrong. Neither of you was in the right place for what the connection was trying to become. You wanted different things. The relationship had run its natural course. Your walking away, however painful in the moment, was probably the right outcome for both of you. The narrative is constructed with whatever materials are available, the genuine incompatibilities, the real difficulties, the authentic complexities of the connection, and shaped into a story that positions the walking away as a conclusion rather than as a consequence, as something that happened rather than something that was generated by specific choices. The rationalization works. For a while, the avoidant moves through the first period of your absence with the specific, composed efficiency of someone whose narrative is holding, whose explanation of what happened is adequate to the size of what they are feeling, which is not yet the full size because the rationalization is performing the buffer function it was constructed to perform. The timeline of the rationalization's adequacy varies. Shallow attachments, connections that felt significant in the moment but did not reach the interior at the depth that the genuine attachment does, can be rationalized for longer, sometimes indefinitely. Deep attachments, the kind this piece is most concerned with, the kind where your presence was reaching the interior in the specific way examined throughout these pieces, cannot be rationalized past a certain point. The feeling is too large. The specific quality of what was lost is too particular. The narrative, trying to contain something that exceeds its containing capacity, begins, around the edges, to fail. The second stage, the intrusion of the specific. The rationalization's failure arrives not through any confrontation with the narrative's inadequacy, but through the specific. The particular, irreplaceable, entirely individual qualities of you that the general narrative cannot accommodate without losing its generality. Because the rationalization requires generality, it requires the walking away to be about a type of incompatibility, a category of difficulty, a class of relational problem. It cannot afford the specific, the particular quality of your humor, the specific way you engaged with the avoidant's actual interior rather than their presented surface, the exact texture of what genuine contact with you felt like in the moments the walls were low enough for genuine contact to happen. The specific dismantles the general, the particular invalidates the category, the irreplaceable quality of you arriving in the avoidance awareness, not as a general loss but as the specific, named, this person and not another loss, is something the rationalization cannot contain. The intrusion arrives in the ordinary moments. The avoidant encounters something, a quality of light, a phrase, a specific sensory detail carrying your particular association, and the specific is there, not as a thought, as a felt presence, the precise, irreducible reality of you in the avoidance interior, surfacing through the rationalization's insufficiency with the specific weight of something that was genuinely known and is genuinely missing. The intrusion is not manageable in the way the rationalization managed the initial loss, because the rationalization was managing a general loss. The intrusion is the specific loss arriving undisguised, and the specific cannot be narrativized back into the general without leaving residue. Without the avoidant being aware, at some level that persists beneath the renewed attempt at narrative, that the rationalization is no longer describing the full reality of what they are experiencing. The third stage, the comparative diminishment. The second stage's intrusions have been establishing, with patient and impersonal thoroughness, the specific quality of what was lost. The third stage completes this establishment through the method that is perhaps the most convincing available, the repeated, involuntary, entirely unflattering comparison of every subsequent encounter with the world against the standard you set. The avoidant moves through the world in the aftermath of your walking away, encountering people who are, in various ways, engaging, who offer warmth or intelligence or the specific quality of interested attention that the early stage of connection always produces, who are, by any objective assessment, worth engaging with, who do not deserve the invisible, automatic, entirely involuntary measuring that the avoidance interior applies to them against the standard of what connection with you felt like. The measuring produces the same result each time. Not that subsequent people are inadequate in some absolute sense, but that they do not have what you had, the specific combination, the particular depth of perception, the specific quality of warmth, the exact texture of genuine contact with someone who could see the actual interior and stay for the seeing. This combination does not reassemble itself in the world of people who are not you. Each encounter that fails, the comparison adds another piece of evidence to the accumulating case against the rationalization. Each person who is warm but not specifically warm in the way you were, curious but not specifically curious in the way you were, present but not present in the way your presence made the avoidant feel like being present was, for the first time, something they wanted to be. The accumulation is not dramatic. It is the slow, quiet, entirely impersonal revelation of a world that does not readily reproduce what was lost. And in that revelation, the rationalization's most fundamental claim, that the walking away was the right conclusion for both people, encounters the evidence of its own inadequacy. The fourth stage, the reckoning. The reckoning is what the previous stages have been building toward, and it arrives when the weight of the accumulated evidence finally exceeds the rationalization's containing capacity, not as a breakdown, not as a dramatic confrontation with the self, as a settling, a slow, non-linear, frequently interrupted, but ultimately unstoppable, settling into the honest accounting of what happened and what produced it. The honest accounting is the thing the rationalization was constructed to prevent, because the honest accounting requires the active voice rather than the passive, requires the acknowledgement of the choices, not the dramatic single-moment choices, but the accumulated, continuous small choices of someone who kept choosing the management over the vulnerability, the distance over the presence, the protection of the self over the genuine meeting of the person who was offering themselves to be met. The reckoning does not arrive as self-flagellation. The avoidance interior is not organized toward dramatic emotional expression, and the reckoning, when it is genuine, does not take that form. It arrives as a quiet, sustained, increasingly honest awareness of the pattern, of the specific ways the pattern operated in the connection with you, of the moments, and there are specific moments, recalled with the specific accuracy of something that was registered at the time, even when it could not be acted upon, when the fear was louder than the love and the management was chosen over the meeting, and you, on the other side of those choices, were left with the specific cost of someone else's fear. The reckoning holds both things simultaneously. The genuine love that was present in the interior throughout, and the genuine failure to express it in the ways that would have allowed it to be received. The avoidant was not indifferent, and the not indifference did not produce the expression that the not indifference should have produced. Both of these things are true. The reckoning is the holding of both without the rationalization that would collapse them into a more comfortable single truth. The fifth stage, the carrying. This is the stage that does not end. Not because the grief persists indefinitely at the same intensity, it does not. It settles into the interior landscape with the specific, quieter quality of something that has been integrated rather than actively processed. But because the carrying is not the same as the resolution, the loss of you is not something the avoidant moves through and arrives on the other side of with the closure that the word resolution implies. It becomes instead a permanent feature, a specific quality of weight in the avoidance interior that does not dissolve and does not demand daily attention and does not prevent the avoidant from continuing to live their life and engage in subsequent connections. But that is there, quietly, consistently, with the specific permanence of something that changed the interior landscape in a way the landscape does not recover from. The carrying contains several things. The specific memory of what genuine contact with you felt like, held with the tenderness that the law of the absent produces, with the specific luminosity that the irretrievable acquires in the avoidance interior over time. The awareness of the reckoning's conclusions, the honest accounting that arrived in the fourth stage and that persists, however uncomfortably, as the most accurate description of what happened and what produced it. The standard, the specific, irreducible standard that genuine connection with you set, against which subsequent connections are measured without the avoidant choosing to measure them, simply because the measurement is the automatic operation of an interior that knows what genuine contact felt like. And beneath all of these, the quietest and most durable component of the carrying, the specific, private, entirely unwitnessed awareness that the walking away was not the inevitable conclusion of an incompatibility or a timing issue or the neutral operation of two people's different configurations. It was the consequence, the earned, honest, self-generated consequence of someone who was given something rare and genuine and handled it with insufficient care. The 5 stages are not a promise. They are not the guarantee of the avoidant's eventual arrival at a readiness that the walking away was supposed to produce. Some avoidants move through the stages and arrive at the reckoning and do the work that the reckoning calls for and become, through genuine internal effort, someone with a different relationship to their own fear. Some avoidants move through the stages and arrive at the reckoning and carry the weight of it without it producing the change that the weight was calling for. The stages are not about what happens to the avoidant as a consequence of your walking away. They are about what happened to you as a consequence of loving them. You gave something real. You received something insufficient. You stayed long enough to be genuinely certain that the insufficient was not going to become sufficient. And then you walked away with your dignity, with your self-respect, with the specific, hard-won clarity of someone who loved honestly, and eventually, with full honesty, understood what they were loving and what it cost. The avoidance 5 stages are their story. Your walking away is yours, and yours, the version of you that was built in the staying, clarified in the reckoning, and finally, completely, turned toward your own life in the walking away, is the more important story, the one worth telling, the one worth living, entirely now, for yourself.